say our reputation needs a new coat of paint and a delicate melody. But I say I like the bruises, 'cause a melody don't mean a thing if we don't have the strength to sing. And I won't be made to ever feel ashamed that I'm American made. I got American parts, got American faith in America's heart.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com from Los Angeles, California. How you doing? It's 7 Pacifico, 10 on the Lesser Coast, and that means it is time for the Tami Jackson Show. Tami Jackson is the emerging threat from the West Coast. On Twitter, she is Tami J. She is the bossy boss of rightvoicemedia.com, and, of course, host of the Tami Jackson Show, heard only on the 405media.com, Tuesday nights at 7 Pacific and 10 Eastern. Right here. Once again, good evening, Tami Jackson.
Good evening, John. I'm glad to be here, and I'm really excited for the conversation tonight with my guest.
He is here, and his name is Jason Conger, attorney, Republican, serves in the Oregon House of Representatives for District 54. He is seeking the Republican nomination in Oregon's 2014 US Senate election. Conger graduated from Humboldt State University in 1997. And earned a law degree from Harvard Law School in 2000. In 2009, he joined the Bend office of the law firm Miller Nash, LLC. He's won 2 state elections, ousting an entrenched Democrat in his first race. In October 2013, Conger announced his candidacy for the Republican nomination for the United States Senate seat currently held by Jeff Merkley. So good evening and welcome to the Tami Jackson Show, Jason Conger.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. Hi, Tami.
Hi, Jason. I am so glad that you had the time. I know that you're scheduled pretty tight with the campaign. I know how that goes. I've been the new media director of a U.S. congressional campaign, and it's hectic. You've just got to be on the go all the time. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I have you for half an hour. I want to make every minute count. Want to let people know I met Representative Jason Conger in person for the first time last Friday, April 11, at a closed meeting of some conservative journalists in the Portland metro area. Jason, you were raised in California, and I won't go into all those details, but it was not the easiest of circumstances. After the half hour, I'm going to play the audio from the Homeless to Harvard and Beyond video that's on your website, congerfororegon.com. But nevertheless, you overcame that, you persevered, you obtained your law degree from Harvard, pretty amazing experience, and after working for a firm in San Francisco, you moved to Bend. I wanted to ask you how you decided on Bend. Had you been there for vacation? I'm from Bend, so I know how gorgeous that high desert country is, but not everyone is that aware.
Well, I had gone to high school in Northern California, just south of the Oregon border. And so I knew people who went up and skied in Bend. I'd never been there. And Amy and I, after I graduated from Harvard, we moved to California where I practiced law. And we wanted to get out of sort of the rat race. We had 4 children at the time and felt like we wanted to bring them up in the Northwest and get back to our roots, really. And so this is a kind of a typical Bend story. I'd never seen it, but I'd heard a lot about it. And I randomly called a gentleman that I knew from, a decade ago. This was in 2003. And I connected with him, and he lived in Bend. He had moved from Northern California to Bend. And when I told him I was thinking about moving to Oregon, he said, forget wherever it was you were thinking and come and visit Bend. And 5-6 trips later, we bought a house and moved up.
Well, that's so excellent. I tell people, being from Bend, I was one of those kids that said, I got to get out of here. But as soon as I got out of there, I went to a number of different places. I went to college down at OSU. I did a brief stint in Virginia at college. I did a short mission trip to Guatemala. I traveled all over the U.S. and I thought, holy cow, I just left God's country, some of the most beautiful country in the United States. Don't tell anyone. But, what was I thinking? It's high desert. It's got a low humidity, hot and dry in the summer, cold and dry in the winter, mountains, desert, ponderosa pine trees. It's a gorgeous place, which is why, Jason, there are fantastic people in every professional vocation you can think of, whether it's doctors or people at the college, so forth. We've got some tremendous people over there in Bend, my hometown. So I don't blame you for moving there. It's a great place. The outdoors, hunting, fishing, skiing, you name it. You can do it all in Bend, Oregon, in that region of Central Oregon. So it's a great place to raise a family.
It really is, and that's everything that you just described is what attracted us to Bend. And I feel Amy and I both, my wife Amy and I both feel very, very blessed that we could choose a place to live, and it has become our home. I mean, we will grow old and die here. This is our place.
And hopefully not soon. That's in the distant future.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Jason Conger, you're running for the U.S. Senate, but the fact is, you have a good life. You persevered all that tough stuff when you were young. It was not easy, but you did it. Now you've got your wonderful wife, Amy, and 5 kids you adore, and a great career. An elected office is nothing you need. What prompted you to run for state representative?
Well, it's a combination of things, but certainly believing that the incumbent was not doing a good job and was not representing me or the people who I relate to in my community and in the state of Oregon. And that was certainly the case in 2010 and motivated me to run for state representative here. And it is the case also in this run for the U.S. Senate. The other motivation, though, is that I feel like a lot of people are being left behind, or they certainly feel like they are. They don't have a PAC, they don't have lobbyists, and many of them, as they try to start small businesses and they start to try to live their dream, or they try to advance their career or go to school and have a career afterwards, many of them feel like the government is more of an adversary than there to help them and to protect them. And I think that cynicism has become rampant, and it concerns me. You mentioned my background. I did grow up, and in fact spent my young adulthood in difficult circumstances, especially in terms of poverty, just being poor. That's not a sad story. It's a good story because I was able to get out of it and to have, very much to live what I would consider my American dream. And there's no way that would be possible, I believe, in any other country than the one we live in. And right. I don't want people to lose sight of that. This is a great country. We have a bright future ahead of us. But, people need to step up, and they need to be willing to serve, for a time. And if that means, sacrificing some time and putting my career on hold for a little while, then I can do it. And I'm fortunate to be able to.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time that we ought to be thinking of public service not so much as a career like what we have there in the Beltway and in the halls of our state capital here in Oregon, but it's something like a slightly longer term jury duty. It's as a citizen, we're giving back to our country, we're serving, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and then we get back to our lives. But, it's not meant to be something where we accrue ever-growing power and constituents. That's not how it was intended. And so when I see people like you that have done everything, that have lived the dream and done what they can to get ahead the right way, what we as conservatives really believe in. I just love to hear the stories. Now, lately, there's been a little bit of buzz about your run, and of course, I've been watching you from the get-go. And there's 4 candidates, and 2 of you are really the front runners. The other one being Monica Webby, who seems to be getting the fanfare from the Beltway elites or something. But I want to touch on a couple articles. First of all, Jason, Michael Warren writes over at the Weekly Standard, which of course I love the Weekly Standard. Democrat Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon is pulling ahead of his potential Republican opponents, but his position is weak heading into his re-election campaign, according to a new survey by a GOP polling firm. Harper Polling found Merkley is ahead of 2 possible Republican opponents, but is still polling less than 50% against them. 47% say they would vote for Merkley over GOP state rep Jason Conger, who polled 40%, while 12% say they're not sure. Meanwhile, Republican Monica Webby, a Portland area pediatric neurosurgeon, trails Merkley by 12 points, 46 to 34%, with 20% saying they are unsure. The poll was taken amongst likely voters in Oregon. On the generic ballot, a Democrat candidate has just a 3-point lead over a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. The poll also found that Merkley, a first-term senator, has just a 39% favorability rating, with 32% having an unfavorable opinion of him, 30% not sure. So, Jason, that's pretty telling right there. Oregon is in a prime position right now to elect a conservative as a senator and in 2 years as a governor, I think.
I absolutely agree, and I think that the poll verifies a lot of things that we already believed and had reason to believe about the electorate and about Oregon. And people, I think, across the country and even here in Oregon, view Oregon as a very liberal state, kind of a deep blue on the electoral map, and that just isn't the case. In many states, many places in the country, the 2 major parties completely dominate elections. In Oregon, that's no longer the case. And in fact, for decades, the electorate, the registered voters, have been heading towards a third. Democrats, Republicans, and all others, the independents.
Right.
And that makes, I believe, that means those independents have essentially rejected both parties, and they are up for grabs for the most part in any given election. So we should be winning already. And in this particular instance, obviously there's a situation where Jeff Merkley is, first of all, he's very, very liberal, so he's out of step with the vast majority of voters in the state of Oregon. He has the most liberal voting record in the Senate. Second, I don't think he's passed a single piece of legislation. Any bills that he introduced have ever passed in 6 years. So he's defective. And the third and probably most important factor has to do, of course, with Obamacare. And Senator Merkley is on the healthcare committee in the Senate. So he has asserted that he actually read the bill and understood it. And was involved
amazing.
In
I didn't know anyone had read
of Obamacare.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I believe him, but it's just hard to believe. 2,600 or 2,600 pages, whatever it amounts to. I guess it depends on the font, but that's I paid a lot for my legal education. I read legal statutes a lot, and with that said, 2,600 pages dealing with 17% of our economy and an incredibly complex healthcare system, that's just impossible for any one human being to understand.
Yes. Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Now, I want to let everybody know this poll we're talking about, and I'm going to talk about it more because we're heading into some talk about Fred Barnes' article, but It was the Harper polling survey of 670 likely Oregon voters, and it was conducted on April 1st and 2nd. And the results were so surprising because I don't think anyone expected this, that in the head-to-head with Jeff Merkley, he was only ahead of you by 7 points, 47 to 40%, and 12% not sure. So that's that 12% that we can really get to. And Monica Webby, on the other hand, trailed in a head-to-head by 12 points, 34% to 46%. So even though those entrenched in the Beltway would have you believe, and we're talking about probably the senatorial Republican committees and the PACs and Karl Rove and whomever would have you believe that she is the Republican for Oregon. But I'm here to tell you that Republicans do not necessarily think the way the Beltway wants them to think here in Oregon. There's a lot of people, Jason Conger, like you and I, who still believe in the sanctity of life, who still are constitutional conservatives and believe in traditional marriage. There's a kind of a bubble of people around Portland and some around Eugene that are extremely progressive, but in other areas of the state, there's a lot of common sense constitutional conservatives.
I agree completely, and so we're talking about both the primary and the general, and the dynamics are a little bit different in both. But certainly,
yes,
2/3 of Republicans in the state of Oregon, of Republican voters, are self-described conservatives. They believe in the sanctity of life. They believe in traditional marriage, and they are extremely protective of their Second Amendment rights.
Right.
And so matching that up with a liberal or a more liberal candidate, a centrist or a moderate or a liberal, call it what you will, those folks aren't terribly motivated. And that shows up repeatedly because we have those kinds of candidates ideologically who run statewide. And very often they lose part of that Republican base. And there are more Democrats than there are Republicans, so we start at a deficit and compete for the independents. And we can't afford to lose or demotivate a key part of our base and go further into the hole before we start that competition for the rest of the electorate. That's the general election. I would also say that someone who is, let's say, pro-choice or pro-gay marriage and runs against Jeff Merkley, they're not going to be able to appeal to and win the votes and the hearts and the minds of those folks who are deeply committed to those issues because, let's put it this way, a Republican can't win in Oregon, certainly, by being more of a Democrat than the Democrat.
Yep.
Those folks who are committed to those issues, I think it is extremely naive to imagine that they will vote for a Republican over Jeff Merkley, who is absolutely, completely sold on the very extreme position on those issues. So I look at that and I think, that's not actually a very thoughtful type of candidate or a candidate to put forward if we actually want to win.
Absolutely. Now, also, I want to tell people 7 points is not that much. 7 points are very doable, right, Jason?
Any incumbent under 50 is in trouble. Any incumbent with the high unfavorable rating and the low favorable rating, like Jeff Merkley, is in trouble.
Yep.
And he's in this situation before there has been any campaigning against him. And so there are a lot of voters who don't know much about him, and once they are informed about the stands that he has taken, the votes that he has taken, and what he advocates for, who he is, I think that his negatives will go up dramatically, and in fact his number will fall probably from 47%. And in that that moment, there's a lot of opportunity to appeal to the folks who are already identifying themselves as undecided But there's also an opportunity to maybe bring some voters over who maybe thought they would vote for Jeff Merkley. So I think he's very vulnerable. I also have to point out that Jeff Merkley won in 2008, and I went back and dug through some records from 2008, and at the end of March, in a head-to-head poll that Rasmussen published, Jeff Merkley was 13 points behind the incumbent Republican at the time, Gordon Smith. And he went on to win. So he was able to make up 13 points. Now, he's a Democrat, so his job is easier than mine as a Republican, but we're only 7 points spread right now. This is a very, very winnable race.
It certainly is. Now, I told you that a couple months ago, I heard Fred Barnes, who I absolutely love, answer Hugh Hewitt's question about Monica Webby having a good chance to defeat incumbent Merkley. And Fred told Hugh to hold on, that there was another candidate who looked as good or better, and that candidate was you, Jason Conger. So just last Friday, Fred Barnes wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal titled, "Oregon's GOP Senate Race Suddenly Gets Lively." Fred Barnes writes, Monica Webby is a pediatric brain surgeon running for the Republican Senate nomination in Oregon. She has never sought elected office before, but she is off to a well-financed and highly touted start. The reason? She has the support of GOP political operatives in Washington as the Republican with the best chance of unseating Dem Senator Jeff Merkley. Jason Conger is an Oregon legislator who is also seeking to win the Republican primary on May 20. He has won 2 state elections, ousting an entrenched Democrat in the first race. Mr. Conger doesn't have the backing of Republican strategists in Washington, and his campaign is barely heralded at all. He trails Ms. Webby badly in fundraising. The Washington practice of intervening in Senate and House primaries, privately or publicly, is hardly a new one. Incumbents are routinely backed by party campaign committees, but intruding in challenger contests or races for open seats is controversial, especially when Republicans in Washington insist, as they do in supporting Ms. Webby, that a less conservative candidate is more electable. This just makes me crazy when I read this stuff, and I know that Fred's been talking about this for a while, so this article is really terrific the way he sets everything forth, Jason.
Well, and of course, I'm very flattered because I know Fred Barnes' storied history, and I remember him being picked to be a moderator in I think it was one of the Reagan-Mondale debates, but one of the Reagan debates. And
right.
I remember, anyway, so he's been around, and he's obviously extremely fair and extremely respected for all the right reasons. And so
right.
I am flattered by that. He's obviously what he's setting up here is what has actually happened, which is the National Republican Senatorial Committee, kind of the establishment in D.C., decided that Oregon Republicans needed to nominate someone who was pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, maybe, it's hard to tell, but maybe squishy on things like amnesty and,
right.
Other kind of hot-button issues, because in their deep analysis, and I say that sarcastically, of course, of the Oregon electorate and how this election was going to set up, they decided that a conservative couldn't win in Oregon.
Yep.
But the fact is, they got it completely backwards. There's absolutely no data, no election results to suggest that actually works. In fact, I'd say 2 things. First of all, the last Republican to win statewide was Gordon Smith in 2002. And he was overtly pro-life. So on social issues, he was pretty conservative.
Yes.
The other aspect of this that I just can't understand why people would think that if you blur the lines between a Republican and a Democrat in a state where Democrats outnumber Republicans by almost 8% in the registered electorate, why anyone would think that the Republican would have a chance of winning if he or she can't distinguish themselves from the Democrat on certain key issues. I mean, the point of elections is, to offer voters a choice between
Absolutely.
two different blocks, between two ideologies and two sets of solutions for the future. And this is a golden opportunity because the liberal, Democrat governing machinery has failed. And the voters, I think, are looking for an opportunity to hold their elected representatives, who happen to be just about all Democrats in Oregon, accountable. So let's give them that chance. I mean, my gosh, let's offer a different view of the future, something that's a little brighter.
Yes. And it's interesting because those same Beltway people that are supporting Webby are the people that supported Charlie Crist against Marco Rubio. And, one of the things, one of my friends who's listening in chat, quoted the line that I loved in the article where Fred says, Republicans in Washington picked an electable primary candidate. They may need to rethink what that means. And that's absolutely right. That's what Fred is getting at here. They think that they know what they can pick and they put the big money behind those folks, but they don't really speak for all of us here in Oregon, and especially after this poll.
Well, they don't speak for anyone in any state other than, I guess, the state that they come from, right? I mean, how arrogant to think that you know better than the people who live and try to make a living and go to school and get married in a state, that you know better who's electable and who should represent them. I mean, isn't the idea of voting that you, the individual, gets, who is casting the vote, gets to choose their representative, not someone from Washington, D.C., who probably, if they ever set foot in Oregon, it was to play golf at Bandon Dunes or something.
I know we do have a nice link store there on the coast. Further incentives for people to come and spend money in our state, and we'll get it humming if we have conservatives like you running it, as opposed to the Dems who have run our state for the last 30 or so years, and the economy has just plummeted. I want to ask you quickly, as we're running out of time, the time has gone so swiftly, how critical would you say that this 2014 election is, Jason Conger?
Oh, I think, everybody, I've noticed in my 46 years of life, I've noticed every election, people will say, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Well, this one might be, and the reason is, Obamacare it's not just a problem from a healthcare perspective, it's a problem from an economy perspective. It's cutting down on hiring, it's creating a lot of risk and cost for businesses and especially smaller businesses, which are typically the ones that are adding the jobs in our economy, especially in a state like Oregon. And we have an opportunity, should Republicans take a majority in the Senate, hold the majority in the House, and I think we will do both, to offer an alternative, to say, let's undo the Affordable Care Act, let's repeal it, and let's replace it with health care reform that actually makes health care more affordable and allows people to make choices about what plan they want to buy and what plan they want to keep. But let's do it thoughtfully, let's do it a little bit more modestly than 2,600 pages. That opportunity is going to get harder and harder as time goes by and the healthcare system adapts to the Affordable Care Act as it continues to be implemented. I mean, we've only seen the tip of the spear so far. So this is an absolutely critical election where we have an opportunity to undo this and offer a more beneficial, better, more positive alternative, and then go about repairing some of the damage that's been done in areas like our foreign policy. And, this is really it may not be the most important election of our lifetime, but it is a very important one. And it's one that is shaping up so that there could be an actual change and that voters could see it happen and see what happens when they cast their votes and hold politicians accountable for their their successes and their failures. So I think it's, I'm excited about it. I know we can win here in Oregon, and, I'm ready to do the hard work and campaign like we did, when we won our long shot challenge against the incumbent here in my state House district, which is very much like the state of Oregon demographically.
Yep.
And it really did change. It was, it was part of a fundamental change in how Oregon was governed.
Yep.
So, that's the opportunity, and it is very important to our future.
I absolutely agree with you. We're at the perfect storm here where I see all but the most hardened socialists are very discontent with what's happened with Obamacare, with our state economy, with our national economy, and we're just right for people like you to be elected. Jason Conger, I want to wish you success in your run for the Senate. You and your staff have all my contact information. Should you need my help in writing, media, new media, you just holler and I will help.
Fantastic! You're on. You're on record. So now you're going to get a call in like 2 seconds.
You betcha. Thank you for joining me tonight. I want to tell people to go to Conger for Oregon.com. Read more about him. Donate. Do everything you can. We need people like Jason in Oregon and across this nation to help implement some good conservative changes. I will be back on the other side. I'll be talking more about Jason Conger, although he has to go off. He's got a tight schedule. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Tami Jackson Show.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
The Friddle Show.
Gay marriage is not even legal in Arizona, so how is this cake discussion even relevant?
The Friddle Show with Crystal Heath.
I mean, this bill, I read it today. You can read it. It's 2 pages long.
The Friddle Show, live Monday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific.
It's become acceptable to sleep around. Did you know that only 3% of Americans abstain from sex until they're married?
The Friddle Show, family-friendly, politically incorrect news commentary from a young Christian conservative perspective.
And if my disagreeing with a lifestyle due to my religious beliefs is now the same as hatred, then I apparently hate 97% of Americans.
Live original talk only on the 405media.com.
The president, he wasn't too far off base when he said that we're no longer a Christian nation because, quite frankly, we're not. The general populace does not have a biblical worldview.
You're on the 405.
Off the Grid.
And he's also the only person I've ever seen that could write, "My dog just rolled over" on Facebook and get like 62 likes.
I'm also, just a correction, I'm the best looking person in social media, too.
Off the Grid with Matt Hochman and Beckett Adams.
You have men in the United States Army running for cover and hoping the police show up.
The base is a soft target that's filled with brave Americans, but they got their hands tied.
I'm sure the jihadists completely consider it a soft target. It's like a shopping mall, or like you said, a school. It's probably worse than a shopping mall, because at least here in Arizona, you're allowed to carry.
In several of these shootings, Jared Lautner in Arizona, the Sandy Hook shooting, a number of these shootings always involved somebody who was desperately unhealthy in the head, but for some reason the argument always turns into, get away from my gun. What can we do to maybe help people like this?
Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, only on the 405media.com.
You're on the 405.
The Wrap.
The best part is this guy's a gun control advocate who's been trading rocket launchers and weaponry with people as far-flung as the Philippines, Russia, and the Ukraine.
The Wrap with Amy Otto and Bruce Carroll.
David Ferdoso joins us.
Lots of scandal going on here. This feels a lot like 2006 right now. That you had Republicans getting into trouble all over the place.
One, is this new delay? One, surprising? Probably not. But two, to paraphrase Hillary, what difference at this point does it make anyway?
They're starting to realize how much damage this law is actually going to do and how much it's going to affect immediately upcoming elections.
There was a piece in the New York Times today where an author details like the numerous failings with his Affordable Care Act, and he starts longing for the health care that his dog has.
Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on the 405media.com.
Thank you so much for protecting our kids from guns.
You're on the 405.
We are a bold and active voice for the unborn. We are Audio Girl Ministries, saving the lives of babies by helping moms in crisis pregnancies get past the crisis. How? Free ultrasound imaging so the woman can see the life she's carrying, and by supplying her with essential baby items, diapers, clothes, food, crib, car seat, all given with a loving and caring heart. Want to help? Log on to AudioGirlMinistries.com and make a tax-deductible donation. AudioGirlMinistries.com. Thanks.
Hey, this is Tony Katz, and you're listening to the 405 Radio because, you know, you're smart like that.
The Talk Alternative is the 405media.com. I want to thank Rep. Jason Conger for calling in the past half hour right here on the Tami Jackson Show. And we are barely halfway through the show. So once again, here's Tami Jackson.
Thanks, John. I'm back, and I want to play for you the audio of Representative Jason Conger's story. Let's listen to From Homeless to Harvard and Beyond.
Now, Jamie and Kevin on FM News 101, KXL.
Okay, Kevin, let's bring him in. State Representative Jason Conger.
Thanks for giving me a little shot on the show.
Kevin, when I messaged you about our guest, that he went from homeless to Harvard, you sarcastically replied, too bad he's a Republican.
Yes, but he has a story that can do it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your story.
Here's a conservative, here's a Republican who understands poverty, because he's lived poverty.
He was born to 60s flower children, dealing with their share of drugs and dysfunction. His mother abandoned him. His father led an itinerant life. When he'd had enough, Jason struck out on his own.
He'd been living in a trailer for about a year by himself, so he started living there at 16. And this particular trailer park, our hometown has a lot of trailer parks. It's very impoverished. Was kind of the lowest end of that. It's higher crime and just not particularly choice place to live.
He met his wife Amy at a dance. They became inseparable. They didn't have much, but they had each other.
We ate soup out of a can, cold, because he didn't have the oven.
They married, began a family, and a future.
He'd always worked 3 or 4 jobs the whole time that I've known him. He would do any job necessary. He'd clean bathrooms and prep pots. He tried to fill in by going up. He always told me about driving in the crummy. It's a big van that goes to the loggers take you up on the hill. He'd come back completely covered in black soot and dirt and a lot of times get injured, and that was usually the hardest part for me, not for him. He's a pretty tough guy.
I was really in jeopardy of kind of slipping through the cracks of society and ending up, you know, wherever folks end up when they don't graduate high school.
His background is one of growing up extremely poor and then making a success of his life.
He continued to do community college classes in between any part-time jobs he could get. Did that for a few years, and then I think it took him maybe 10 years or 11 years to get his bachelor's degree. And by then we had a few kids, so he said, I think I'll take the LSAT. We couldn't afford the get ready to take the LSAT book, so we went to the library and they had it. And apparently he must have scored amazingly high on it, because we started getting all these phone calls and all these letters. Yale and Harvard said yes, and he did really, really well at Harvard. And we were used to living on so little that we didn't need much. Then we paid off our student loans probably faster than anyone I know.
You want people like him standing up for the people in Oregon. You want people who have been exposed to some more difficult aspects of life, and he has.
We've all seen the same news stories about Obamacare is a train wreck.
about the national debt exploding, about the middle class shrinking, about all of the things we know are going wrong in this country. I think about those kids who don't get a high school diploma. What do they do the next day? What do they do in the next year? They're not going to go to college. They never got through high school. They're not going to get a job. If they're lucky, they can get, maybe a minimum wage job. But there aren't even enough of those to go around, and you can't make a living in the long run on minimum wage. We know the deficit's exploding, and we know the middle class is disappearing. And in all of these things, we know that this translates to bad news in Oregon as well, right? We're number one in food stamps now, food stamp enrollment in the entire country. In the last 6 years, the number of people on food stamps has doubled. And in the same time period, there are twice as many people on welfare.
A unique perspective virtually no one in either party has. An understanding of which hands to hold and which arms to twist.
Because you don't represent just lawyers or just doctors or just wealthy businessmen and women. You represent everybody.
Jason Conger has done more than just talk about tough issues. He's made the tough votes in the legislature. Bipartisan leadership for middle-class tax relief. School choice. Increasing funding for public schools and universities, reform for public employee pensions, saving taxpayers millions, an A from the NRA, and a champion of the sanctity of life. Not your typical Republican, but the new battle-tested Oregon Republican. Soft-spoken, but with a backbone of steel. Jason Conger. He's the conservative Republican Republicans have been waiting for. Jason Conger for U.S. Senate.
In honor of our guest, U.S. Senate candidate Jason Conger, who's a very, very unusual Republican candidate who can win. I mean, this guy went from homeless to Harvard Law School. He's no slouch. He has done some amazing things.
I'm Jason Conger, and I approve this message.
Join the Conger campaign team. Go to congerfororegon.com to learn more.
Now joining me after that compelling audio, but I have Oregon Firearms Federation founder and president on the line, Kevin Sterrett. Kevin, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, Tami.
You bet. Kevin, you are the force behind Oregon's one Second Amendment Guardian organization. You keep up with legislation and hold legislators accountable, and you do not take candidate endorsements lightly. Representative Jason Conger has garnered the Oregon Firearms or OFF endorsement. What did you consider before awarding him that endorsement?
Well, that's a great question, and there's a lot of things that get considered, and sometimes they're not as easily quantified as we'd like them to be. It's really a tricky thing trying to come up with candidate ratings and all those considerations, because some of it is a little abstract. The fact is that Jason took out an incumbent anti-gun legislator in his district, one of the people who we had considered are one of the most anti-gun legislators we had faced. She was a target. We wanted to send her back to her private life, and Jason took that seat. Since then, he has been 100% pro-gun vote on every time there's been an opportunity. But there are other things. Obviously his personal story is a pretty compelling one. And a person who has achieved what he's achieved in spite of that adversity, in our estimation, proves what we're dealing with is someone who's a fighter. And I think at this time and this place where our country is at, that is something we desperately need. We need people who go to Washington and stand up to leadership and stand up and believe in things. But one of the other really important factors for us, and I hope people will understand this, is that Jason really wanted to be endorsed by our organization. And we're a very, very staunch, kind of militant, no-compromise organization. And so when someone seeks to be aligned with us, and it's, really makes it a point to reach out to gun owners, that's an important thing. We believe that really matters, that there was a time in Oregon where Republican leadership was telling candidates not to even talk to us because we were so militant and we were so strident. And so when a candidate actively seeks out gun owners and wants their vote, it tells us that they're not afraid to be aligned with the values that are important to us.
Which happen to be constitutional values. You know, Kevin, it's interesting. I tell people, now that I've met Jason personally and queried him at length, he's personable, he's articulate, he's intelligent, and he's able. But what I value even more is that he's decidedly and unapologetically pro-life and a supporter of the Second Amendment. So I would tell people that Jason Conger believes in protecting unborn and born life.
Well, you know, Tami, the thing about Jason is he hasn't equivocated on his positions, and in you know, when you look at the National Republican, the leadership and the scene there, they seem to be going in a direction that they hope to win by adopting the policies of their opponents.
Yes.
And Jason's refused to do that. He's made it quite clear where he stands. You know, I've met with, I sat down and spoken to his principal opponent, Monica Webby, very intelligent woman, obviously, but there really was no question that when you deal with Jason, he says what he believes, and with Dr. Webby, I have come away not entirely sure what she felt. And
yes.
She, you know, this is not a criticism of her or candidacy or anything, but the fact is that we felt there wasn't much question that he was a stronger candidate, and in a time where the national leadership of the party is really caving constantly, our hope is to always find candidates who are willing to step up. And you know, there are a handful of members of Congress now who are bucking leadership. And quite frankly, Tami, I don't think we can survive too much longer of the kind of backsliding, squishy Republicans that we have who are controlling the agenda. The country just simply can't survive it, and that's why we're always hoping for and looking for fighters.
Yep, like Jason Conger. I know. When you hear his story, it is so dang compelling. It is the American dream come true. The idea that good standards and ethics and what have you, and hard work and doing things the right way can accomplish great things. And that's what he's done. And rather than sit on his laurels and say, okay, I've now got the good life with my wife and kids here in Central Oregon and in a beautiful area, and I'll just take it easy. He says, no, now I'm going to serve a little bit and give back. And so I look at him, and I'm on board with you, Kevin. I say this guy's a fighter. He's got some spine, and he's got his principles firmly in mind, and he's exactly what we need for Oregon and the nation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, every time you deal with a candidate, you're concerned about, are they going to be able to stand up to the pressure that they're going to face, and that's a realistic concern. But listen, the fact is that, as you just pointed out, I mean, his story is one of constantly overcoming adversity. To come out of that situation, to go to Harvard, then to start a family, support his family, go to school, become an accomplished attorney at a major firm, homeschool his kids, which clearly is not something you do if you're not committed to the best for them. I think it's hard to deny that this is a person of incredible grit and accomplishments.
Yep, and I love that. Well, time for a break. Kevin Sterrett of the Oregon Firearms Federation, thanks for joining me on the show tonight.
Thank you very much, Tami.
Appreciate it. This is the Tami Jackson Show. I will return after the break to wrap up the hour with final thoughts on the next U.S. Senator from Oregon, Jason Conger.
You're on the 405.
Thank you for shopping Amazon.com. When you do, that makes you a sponsor of the 405 Media. Click on the Amazon banner on top of our homepage. Then shop. Simple. It costs you nothing. When you think Amazon, click one more time on the 405media.com, then on the Amazon banner. Thank you. Gang of 405 here on the 405 Radio.
Good morning, John. Morning, Scott.
Scott, what's going on in your life?
Do you really want to know?
You were never a nobody. Who are you trying to kid?
Oh, shut up.
They put these people in charge of organizations that have never been in charge of anything else as far as I can tell, and they perform abysmally.
Do you think that after everything that's happened, there's any way in hell that a single-payer system would be implemented while Barack Obama is still in office?
I'm going to take my surliness and go find those individual people that were just on that tape there and hunt them down this weekend just to solve it for you guys, okay?
Dr. Gruber sounds like the epitome of an elitist who's tucked away in his tenured position at a university far, far, far away from real life of real people.
The original and classic Gang of 405, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on the 405media.com.
You're on the 405.
It's John Grant here from the 405radio.com. Did you know we started the 405 Radio from nothing only a little over a year ago? That's right. We started with a single podcast and shopped it around to the big guys. So we know how hard it is to break in and promote your own show and get anyone to listen to it. That's why the 405radio.com launched our partner program. It's free. We want you to do your best and be heard on the 405 Radio. We'll feature you in a special section, promote you with social media, and stream your show along with the rest of our 24/7 programming. If you're an independent podcaster, believe me, we've been there and done that. Okay, here's our email address. Are you ready? The 405radio at the405radio.com. Some of our hosts you've never heard of only a year ago are now thought leaders in conservative politics. They've gone on to do real radio and blog for big-name sites. We believe you deserve a shot, so tell us who you are and why your show is good and different, and we'll feature you as a partner on the 405radio.com.
CSC Talk Radio is proud to be a part of 405media.com.
Listen to Beth Ann and Common Sense Conversations Talk Radio, weeknights, 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern, here on the 405media.com.
Hi, this is retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and you're listening to the 405 Radio.
And you're listening to The Talk Alternative, which is the 405media.com, the waning moments of the Tami Jackson Show. Straight ahead, one more time for your Tuesday night. Here is Tami Jackson.
Hello, I am back for the remaining minutes of the show. Been talking with Jason Conger, and then I spoke with Kevin Sterrett of the Oregon Firearms Federation. Kevin's great on air. He shoots straight on air and on the range. He does not mince words when it comes to candidates and legislation. So to have him on, to have him endorse Jason Conger really says something. Something else I want to say is the other endorsement that Jason Conger has been awarded is that of the Oregon Right to Life. Now, the Oregon Right to Life, like the National Right to Life, is very, very persnickety about candidates that they endorse. They don't endorse someone just because they say, oh, yeah, I'm pro-life, or yeah, I don't vote for late-term abortions, or what have you. The Oregon Right to Life organization here in Oregon, and I've spoken to the executive director in person and on the phone, they are very, very careful. If someone is awarded an endorsement from them, that means that their voting record is 100% pro-life. Jason Conger has 5 kids. He does homeschool those kids, he and his wife Amy, wonderful person. He told me a story about another reason why he is so completely pro-life. One of their children, in an ultrasound, the doctors believed that they saw something amiss, maybe recommended something other than carrying to term. And Jason and Amy, of course, being pro-life, carried that child to term and gave birth to a wonderful, healthy baby. This reaffirmed in his mind that doctors do not always know exactly what they're talking about. They are not God. Somebody else is, and it's not them. So, Jason is firmly pro-life. He is firmly a Second Amendment person, a small government person, etc. Now, some of the Beltway pundits are starting to take notice because of this recent poll. So what I would like to do is everybody that's listening, I would like you to go to his website, which is Conger for FOR Oregon.com. I'd like people to make donations to his campaign, to write in and help. If you have $5 or $10 or $25, I like to emulate Hugh Hewitt, and he's not afraid to ask for money on behalf of people who are people of integrity and spine, like Jason Conger. He's from my hometown of Bend, but you know what? That wouldn't mean so much to me were he not also a man of great integrity that has overcome incredible odds to obtain the life he has now, which is a good life, and he's putting it kind of on the line to run for office because he believes in doing this, in being a public servant. I think you all need to support him. I am supporting him in every way I can. When I see a candidate like that is so worthy of support, well, I've just got to talk about it, and that's what I've done tonight. So I've been happy to do so. Once again, the website is Conger for FOR Oregon.com. Also on Twitter, he's at the same. It's at Conger for Oregon. And he's also on Facebook. If you look at Jason Conger, and you'll see Conger for Senate or something. But if you query on Facebook, you will find him. You need to find him. You need to support him. This is a guy worthy of our support in Oregon. Also for people across the nation that have $5, $10, $25 that they could give to a campaign that really could use the help. We've got the National Senatorial Republican people saying, oh no, you've got to support Monica Webby. Monica Webby is not a firm conservative. Jason Conger is. Sorry. I know Monica personally. She is a fine pediatric neurosurgeon. Fabulous in that realm. But for senator from the state of Oregon, my money's on Jason Conger. That's the way it is. Once again, this is Tami Jackson. Next Tuesday, I will be back with author of 11 Principles of a Reagan Conservative, poli-sci prof at Grove City College, Dr. Paul Conger. Until then, I'm just one conservative gal encouraging you to keep fighting the good fight.